We good? 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order at 7:03. Could I have roll call, please? Hope the treasurer has left her spot.
I'm here. I didn't use the agenda.
While we're waiting, everyone likes seaweed.
Pushing the seaweed, like in a section of
Seaweed offer.
30 people and give them a Friday. Okay, we have a fourth. Would you like to try some seaweed?
The seaweed.
All right,
She's
bring it
thinking about
back.
Oh, me?
into business
I
now.
like seaweed just fine because it's
Okay.
salty, but no, I
All
don't.
right.
Want to.
Roll call.
Aida will be absent this evening. Sean,
Here.
Sylvia,
Present.
Steve,
Here.
and
Excellent. Okay, we're going to move on to the oath of office so we can officially bring in onto the board. And I'm going to ask Sylvia if you would
I
deliver
believe we do
the oath of
stand
office.
and deliver. I
I'll
think
do that.
it's like that. And I do
Yes.
have a copy, right, so that you don't have to be, you
Oh,
want.
I have to say it? Do I have to say it?
Well, I'm gonna kind of feed it to you and then you,
Oh, I like it when I get
but if you want your own
Where's
copy.
the media?
Binding the
Where is the media? Where's the media? Do we all stand? We've never all
I don't
stand.
get to.
I'm just getting out of the way.
Okay.
I want to get a good picture.
Oh, boy.
All right, well, go ahead and begin.
Okay, so if you could please repeat after me, the oath of office of board member. I, Ann Erickson, do solemnly swear
I, Ann Erickson, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties
as board member in and for the said Yellow Springs Exempt Village School District,
as board member in and for
the said Yellow
the
Springs,
said Yellow Springs School District,
Greene County, Ohio,
Greene County, Ohio,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and in accordance with the laws
and in accordance with the laws
now in effect and hereafter to be enacted
now in effect and herever to be enacted
during my continuance in said office
during my continuance in said office
and until my successor is chosen and qualified.
until my successor is chosen and qualified.
Hey, can I get you to sign where we're
official.
going?
I did.
Yeah, we
Oh, you
official.
did that? Okay.
The handcuffs are officially on.
She's pre-signed, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm what do you call it?
Recidivist?
Recidivist.
Yeah.
How do I know that?
Okay, moving right along, we need an approval of the minutes. Everyone seen the minutes?
Yes.
Need a first.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any changes?
No.
All right, roll call.
Sylvia,
I think I abstained because I wasn't here, is that right? Okay.
Steve,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes. All right, motion passes. Persons present? Looks like everybody's here.
tonight.
Not a big group tonight, so we'll move right along. We have 3 letters of communication in our board packet. And we'll move on to community comments. Anyone from the community like to comment?
Quickly comment.
All right.
Okay, you can step up to the podium, sir.
Please identify yourself.
I'm Eli Hurwitz. I'm here representing the Yellow Springs Education Association, and I want to compliment all the Yellow Springs educators who have been working diligently for the first weeks of school and to celebrate the work that the Mills Lawn Elementary School teachers are doing, staying the extra hours after work to have parent meetings and introduce parents to the things they're doing in their classroom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other community comments? Doesn't look like it. We'll move into administrative reports. Elementary principal.
How you guys doing? Good, all right.
All right, how are you?
Good, it's been a busy, even though this is a short week, feels like a very busy week. We're trying to crunch everything into 4 days. Things are going really well at Mills Lawn. One thing I wanna also second what Eli just said, that these classroom meetings that we're conducting, it's something we've done for about probably 3 or 4 years, and it was kind of a response to parents wanting to know more about their teachers, about the classrooms, about the curriculum, and just, you know, our open house is fine, but it's really more geared towards students and just meeting their class, seeing their classroom, meeting their teacher. But parents want, more. They want to know their teacher. So it's a significant effort. It's something that our teachers take very seriously. I think basically after tonight, there's one more meeting that's going to happen, but all of our grade levels have spent an hour talking to parents and introducing them to the classroom and the curriculum and just getting to know the parents and answering questions. So I think it's great. And that's going really well also. So other things I want to highlight, Jacob was able to help complete this effort where now across the building, K-6, we have Chromebooks in every classroom. And the last piece was getting them in the hands of kindergarten through second grade students. So we have basically a 2-to-1 ratio or better. There's about 12 or 13 Chromebooks in every classroom, and they're used in different ways. Obviously at kindergarten they're not going to use them at the same level as 5th and 6th graders do, but it's really important. It's taken us a few years to get there, and it's great. So we now have those resources for all of our students.
Can you explain to this Luddite what a Chromebook is?
Yeah, a Chromebook is it's a laptop, but it's basically just runs internet and web kind of website kinds of things. It doesn't have a hard drive, and it can't really have
store.
Right. It doesn't have like programs that you can store on there. But it's for what we need. We're doing STAR assessments and some math websites and reading websites, and a lot of what students use Chromebook is great for. It's a lot cheaper than a laptop like this, and very affordable and a good tool for us. So yeah, and Tim kind of paved the way with figuring out how we could have more computers in the hands of our students in terms of and getting a good tool. So that's another great thing that's just happened really today. Finalized it today.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, go. Sure.
So is it in some ways better than textbooks financially because you don't have to keep replacing them? They won't get out of date.
I mean, they
Would
will
it replace textbooks or some textbooks?
Yeah, I mean, so part of what we don't really use textbooks at Mills Lawn anymore. I mean, we have a math program where we purchase some materials, student handbooks and things like that. But for the most part, we use books and chapter books and things like that for our reading curriculum. But the Chromebooks, they have a life of 3 to 5 years, which is pretty good for what we pay for them. And certainly, there are a lot of teachers, especially older grades, that use digital textbooks and online resources for students in terms of the curriculum. So definitely pays off there. Another thing to comment on is that our schedule is going really well, and I appreciate the board's support of giving us the extra time that we need from our specialists to make sure that teachers have that 60 minutes of planning daily, and it's also allowed us to have these after-school meetings where we have weekly team meetings and PBL meetings, and we now have more space to talk and share ideas and figure things out. So I think all of that is going really well, and it's really positive beginning to the school year.
Matt, can you just, I'm sure we had this information before, but refresh me. In terms of the enrollments as we now have them after about 4 weeks, about a month?
2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks. Where are we as compared to last year?
We are almost at the same place in terms of numbers.
Okay.
We might be up or down one student. I mean, it's around 370. It's shifted in terms of where some of those kids are. We have more first graders. We added on a first grade section. We graduated 3 sections of 6th graders, and we still have 3 sections, but we have less in 5th grade. So it's a little bit different across the board. But
So do you feel that the building is at capacity in that sense?
we're using every classroom,
Okay.
and we couldn't add another classroom on.
Okay.
I mean, unless we took somebody out of their space at this point.
Mhm.
So every year we've been able to have 18 classrooms full of students, and give or take, there's maybe a little room in certain grade levels for a few more open enrollment students, and they seem to trickle in, as we go through the next couple of weeks. But yeah, we're doing pretty well with numbers.
Got it. Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Clark.
Hello.
Dr. Clark.
That's right.
Sorry.
Sean. Dr. Sean. So you had a chance to read my report. The beginning of the year, we have gotten off to a good start. I included some numbers with regards to student enrollment from last year to where we are currently this year. I think it's probably our biggest jump in terms of new students in the school that are new to the district, either from within town or open enrollment. And I tried to capture it somewhere there. And so last year, at the end of the year, we had just over 340 students, and now we're just under 390. So it's a big lift. There are a lot more bodies in the school. Granted, it is still a small school in a sense, but it's pretty full. Hallways are full, classrooms are full. Pretty much every grade is full along the way. You'll notice up there on the first 2 rows, going across, you'll see 2 numbers with asterisks. I put those there because grade 9 this year, I thought it would kind of be nice to point out to you that that's the class of 2020. So you named a plan after them. They seem to be going okay. But I wanted to kind of point out there that there are 6 more students jumping in there along the way. But we've got a nice big group of 7th graders that have come up from Mills Lawn. You can see that if you look at the second row toward the end, we graduated a small senior crop of students. So combined with just more students coming up from Mills Lawn, I mean, we're about up 50 students or so, 50 bodies from where we were last year. And then in terms of the second piece that I put up there, last year at about this time, at the end of October, we were awarded a grant. It was actually out of Perry Local Schools, in combination with Wycliffe City Schools. Both those school districts are up in the Cleveland area. And it was a neat grant in that what it allowed us to do is take 10 of our students, along with a couple of our teachers, up to lead a 2-day workshop for 50 students up there from those 2 different districts. And basically what they did was they created a kind of a PBL over the course of 7 weeks in a distant kind of environment. And they submitted again to Martha Holden Jennings and Foundation, and that foundation graciously awarded that grant again. So we're going to take another crew of folks on up there. And it's just a couple of tweaks here and there from what we learned from last year. But it should be another exciting time. It's really neat to be able to take our kids up there. I think one of the biggest takeaway from us is, so students up there are trying to figure out what they can do to improve their school, and that's kind of related to the driving question. And so they come up with ideas, and then our students there's one of our students for each one of these student teams there, and they keep going, oh, we've got that. Oh, we do that. And it might be a student's grant with the Charlotte Drake piece, or it might be, a host of things, academic lab or voice and choice, other kinds of options. And so our kids actually come back and say, oh man, we got good. Right? So it's kind of nice. I wish I could take more of our students up to feel a little bit more gratitude about what's going on. But so anyway, so we're scheduled to go up at the end of October. A couple of staff members, we get a different kind of a driver's license that allows us to take up a van full of students. So we get a physical for that, and a little driving test. Anyway, that's really all I'm saying. That's not the highlight of it.
That's what I was saying. And the board doesn't want to know anything.
Yeah, right.
else about the van.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions?
And, I would add that since the van issue came up, we're talking about maybe buying a van. Because I think there's a real need for it. Actually, we probably need 2, frankly. We have enough traffic that could really, it would save us revenue on the one side, because we'd have transportation. Right now, we're taking buses that take small groups of kids places.
Yeah.
Which if we can avoid that, that'd be great. So we need one that's probably can meet the needs of some of our special needs kids. And then we need one that maybe would just be a normal, typical 12-passenger van. And so that would really help us transfer kids to different places that they're going to, as opposed to using a bus, which is what we're doing now, which is really pricey, for the number of kids we're taking. And this would be, we can get teachers licensed very easily, staff members, coaches, you name it, and it will really allow us to reduce the strain we already have on transportation right now, and help in a lot of other ways. So I've been talking to Don a little bit about it, sort of gently, in the past few weeks, but we've been wanting to do that for years, actually. I think this year we're going to really try to do it. So.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move into the Student Services Director.
Mine should be up there.
Okay, what do I do to get rid of this? Is there an add? Pete?
F11?
And it's okay. You really don't need to see the last part of it. The first part, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background of the work that the staff does outside of the teachers and principals. There's the student services departments. There's a lot that goes on at the beginning of the year. Just to give you an idea of just some of the things that they do, like school nurses, they need to look at all of the medical information and immunization forms for everybody, new and returning. And they look at that to update the information and make sure that the teachers and the office staff know about anything that would be necessary to keep the kids safe. If they have an EpiPen, if they have seizures, they may have to train staff on emergency procedures for giving that kind of medication, and have to have them sign off that they were trained. If you go on a field trip and someone has an allergy or has some kind of special medical need, the teachers get a list. All that happens at the beginning of the year from what the families turn in with the enrollment packet in the first week or couple weeks. So they were busy doing that, looking through all the immunizations. And then I do have to mention that since there's been staff turnover for a couple of years, anytime that happens, sometimes a little confusion creeps in, like, oh, is it this form or that form? And people, it just happens. So they're spending some extra time this year making sure that any of that confusion gets cleared up and it's aligned between the buildings, so that we have a good system in place. And that's not usually what they would be doing, because the system would be in place. So I have to recognize that they're doing that. And then Tina Vujanovic is at the Ohio Department of Education School Nurse Conference. It's an annual conference in Columbus, and it's for 3 days. She's there learning about any updates and requirements that she could bring back and make sure we're current. And I put technology, food service, and therapists together because technology really hits everything at the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year for technology is making sure everybody has a device that's assigned to them, making sure it works, making sure they have access, staff, students, therapists, food service, if something gets updated, working out all the glitches that we thought we had down in the planning for the beginning of the year, but when it actually starts, there's usually some troubleshooting. So between access and then troubleshooting all the problems everybody has when you're going to start using things, that's a big portion of the beginning of the year. And access is not just getting on the internet, printing, and being able to use the copier. It's for every commercial program that we use in the buildings, like the STAR assessment program or the math program that Matt was talking about. Every year, students go to a new classroom with a new teacher. So every year, all of those student user accounts need to be reassigned into a class and updated for each kid, each class, or wherever it's used. So that's, it's a lot of setup work. And you usually can't do it so much beforehand because you don't know who's moving in and moving out. So you sort of have to wait until you find out who's here. So that's some of the things that go on. One thing that always happens in every school district that I'm hoping we get a better handle on is therapists have a device. and it's usually issued by their ESC or one of their school districts, and then they take it to different places. Like our new OT, she has a device that belongs to Springfield City Schools because she works there several days in the week, and then she comes to us with that device. And then she needs to use our things because there's certain timelines, which when I go over our annual special ed rating, you'll see we have to be 100% compliant with. Well, she needs to use her device to do that, and so she needs to print and use it. Well, if she works here, we have our own unique security and network settings. Over there, she has her own unique. Some places, some therapists go to more than one place. Every time you fix something, so they work here, you break something there, which I did today. So she can access her Yellow Springs stuff, but she can't do anything in Springfield with her Springfield device. But so it's a little more work than it would be if it wasn't a shared device. So Jacob and I met with Greene County Technology and took about a half a day to clear up some things there. And then we're going to be meeting with Clark County Tech Support to try to clear up some of the other ones because I don't, you want them to be able to do their job in the contracted amount of days and not need more days. So we're working on that. The other kinds of things that happen with technology, everybody periodically either updates or gets a new system, and things like that happen. Sodexo got a new point of sale system, and so they have to make it work on their end and make it work on our end, so we have to work with that. They have a new person supporting us named Michelle Brown, and she's wonderful, and she actually came out for the whole first week of school because they use a new system to bring in lunches, and since it was the first time they used it, she wanted to be there to support, to make sure that it could go off as well as possible with new staff using a new system for the first time. And then I switched us to IEP Anywhere, which is a program offered through MVECA, and MVECA offered training for that, so all the special education staff and therapists went to that in August, and we're using that program, so I'm sure there's going to be some things to work out there. So those are the kinds of things that happen, just to give you an idea. With our emergency operating procedures, or the safety plan, that is all approved. All the components have been approved by the state, ODE, and Homeland Security. We turned that in, and we just had a little technical thing. We had to resubmit one part of it, and it took a little bit longer than even I realized, because I guess you have to resubmit it to Navigate, you have to resubmit it to Office of Homeland, then to ODE, and they all have their turnaround time. So I was like waiting, and so I finally called, and they're like, oh yeah, it's approved. It just didn't send us the automatic email. So we're good, and we could do the required staff training, have dates set at the end of September and the beginning of October to do that. And if everything goes as planned, we'll have flip charts as a quick reference guide for the staff for the emergency operating procedures for that training. Special education, we have some new staff, our school psychologists, the occupational therapists, and new aides, and they are all fitting in really well. I'm just really pleased with all of them. I hope they're as happy here as I am with them. And I will have to say, I didn't mention it in there, but we are really full on some of our caseloads, really full, especially like middle school is really full. Big caseloads at the elementary in some areas. So just, that happens as numbers go up and down, enrollment and whatnot, but we have some big caseloads, so it's going to be a lot of extra work for our special ed folks. And then last year, just talking with the intervention specialists, we knew it was something we wanted to work on this year, was talking about how PBL expectations fit with special education services. And it's probably just a sign of growth with PBL in the district, because if you think of an intervention specialist role, we have expectations for teachers, and they're teachers, but they can consult with a general education teacher, give them consultation, ideas, support, accommodations. They can co-teach with a general education teacher. They can have their own class in a resource room and be the lead teacher by themselves, and everything in between. And those things happen simultaneously with the caseload. And then they also work with more than one grade level. So thinking about that having all that happen, it's, inevitable that there's going to be a few logistical questions about how do I do this expectation, how do I do it here and there. And so some of that started coming out at the end of the year, just not really complaints or anything, more just questions like how do we and do I do that too, and what happens when I have this here and I'm supposed to do that. And so we just talked about it, and we're going to have some more discussions about that and make sure that it works for the kids on their caseload and makes sense for them, and it's individualized and it's authentic. I think was kind of what the principals and I said was, making most sense. So that's just something we'll be working through. The last thing is the annual special education rating from the state, and that's the part you need to see as far as looking at something on the screen.
It wasn't showing up for a second.
Yeah, mine's not loading now.
Means corrupted file.
Mine just says, whoops, there's a problem loading more
I said the
pages.
same thing, so for whatever reason, it's not coming through.
That's okay, it's really been a week. So
Wanna talk about it?
I could tell you about it, it's fine. The visual helps you, but anyway. So we get an annual rating.
What division?
Yes, please. Yeah, I could pass an extra one around to share if you want.
Yeah, I can share it.
Here's another.
Yeah. Okay.
So I might need another copy.
Does somebody else need one?
No, you have this one here. Here, I'm glad I made two copies. All right, so there's a page, and it was in color to help you kind of see the two different ones, but this one's black and white. The first page that has the heading on it with the little icon, that whole page is about our actual rating. They gave us an actual and a projected. The actual rating for 2016, if you look halfway down, it says actual rating and it says meets requirements. All right, so that's good. The scale right above that on the side, it's a 4-point scale, 1.0 up to 4.0, 4.0, the amount of points you're awarded, gives you the highest level is meets requirements. You can get needs assistance, needs intervention, needs substantial intervention. You would have things like recommendations, action plans you need to do, or you might have the state regional center state team come in and give you some intervention, or you could even have some oversight if you needed a lot of intervention. So anyway, we are doing great because we got all of our points. The way it breaks down is that there are 9 indicators, all compliance indicators. They're listed on the bottom, and the state sets a target for each one each year, and then the second column has our results, and then you get your points based on that. So that's down there. We had data on 6 of the 9. It's not a bad thing, it is just that we're small, and sometimes it's such a small number that they don't have enough to do their calculations, so you just get an annual report. So we got all 4 points in all 6 indicators that had data, so that's where you got the 24. You divide it by the 6, you get 4. It's still all the points, so that's why we meet requirements. Those things on the bottom are things like discipline. Are we suspending or doing disciplinary action disproportionately with special ed population as opposed to general ed? Are we over-categorizing? Is there something unusual in our numbers? Those are the first ones. Timely initial evaluations means there's a set timeline when you have to get an evaluation done, and we have to be perfect. The target is 100%. That's why the OT needs her stuff to work here by September 19th when it's due. And we had 100%, so we got all 4 points. Early childhood transition from C to B is when you go from birth to 3. If they're a Yellow Springs resident, they're tracked going into the preschool. There's another timeline there, and you have to hit that. Again, the target is 100%. You have to be perfect. So that means if somebody moves here and they have to have everything done, that's usually 120 days, but they turn 3 tomorrow, we have to have it done and meet tomorrow. It has to be in place by their 3rd birthday. And that target is 100%. We were so small that we didn't have a report on that, but I can guarantee it's 100%. I know it is. And then secondary transition and planning, that's a section on the IEP from middle school and up. That's some goals and some things we're required to have, talking about what do you plan, as a student, what are they planning to do after high school, and what services do we have in place along the way to support them to get there, and then how it's reported. Both things go into this, and it has to be 100%. It has to be 100% on the reporting, but they also audit things that are in the plan. That's kind of they audit it just periodically, and we were fine on that. Timely correction of non-compliance, if we get anything that shouldn't be late or left uncorrected, and we're fine. Timely and accurate data submitted, and the target is to not have any issues, and we don't, so we got all points on that. And that is definitely Susan Griffith, is thank you for that, because that's the EMIS reporting she does. So that's how they do this every year. Why they gave us a projected one is that in 2018, on top of these 9 indicators, they're going to add 6 more. And so they decided that they would show us until then what our projection would be based on the data we have. The 6 more are on the next page. The 6 more, if you look at the bottom, are the results indicators. And those are going to be added. Now, these are just for special ed kids. This isn't for everybody. So when it says math proficiency, it's math proficiency for kids that are on IEPs, kids that have special education services. So how they're going to figure it out is at the top. At the top where you see compliance indicator on the right, that's the information I just went over. And then based on the data they have, on the left, where it says results indicator, that's what we would have based on the data. So we had data for 3 of the indicators out of the 6, and we would have got full points. So again, we would have met requirements, same kind of scale. But those things are math proficiency based on the state tests. Did they meet the target set every year by the state on that test? They want it to be, the state wants it to be 34.19 as their target, and we got 43.06, so we did great. Same with reading proficiency. Reading proficiency overall and for 3rd grade reading guarantee, they want it to be 38.56. We had 69.44 and 75% for 3rd grade reading guarantee. So again, well over what the target was. So we would have been fine. The ones that are to be announced is going to be graduating with standard requirements. They're going to set a target for who has to do that on an IEP, which is usually not an issue except for if you have a very severe disability, and you would have different requirements. So now they're going to be a target limit on that. And the big one everyone would talk about would be the state assessments, because you have to participate either in the state assessment, the AIR assessment, or the alternate assessment. Alternate assessments are for kids with very significant cognitive issues, and they would take an alternate test. And if you take either of those, you count participation. In high school, sometimes if it's deemed appropriate by the team, you can have your participation waived. So that's where that might be an issue for school districts. But those targets are all to be determined later. And then preschool, they have something called the early learning assessment, and so they're collecting that annually, and that's how they'll do that. Based on those results, they'll set a target, and then they'll measure our kids. So those are the new ones. They'll do this projection again next year. So just giving us an idea how we're doing. And then starting in 2018, they'll do it based on both sets of indicators and give us the rating based on it. So, any questions?
Steve, what's actually being measured here when it says 2016? Is this last year?
It is the EMIS data from, and I believe it's actually an offset, so it's not the flat out school year. I think it's offset by a year and a half.
Okay, I have no idea what that just meant.
Yeah. It's not from last year's data. It's from the year before.
It's from, so if I'm looking, just picking this, the 3rd grade reading proficiency, that the 3rd graders being listed here are actually 5th graders now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep, because by the time they get it to us, then it takes a while for them to do all their number crunching.
Sure it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's confusing that way because it's
Okay.
later
This is
data.
not, this is not what we call, it's the opposite of real-time data. It's
Right, right,
antiquated data.
yes,
Good, okay.
yes, it's just to look back, it's not really useful at this.
Right.
Yeah,
Dusty data.
it's just for historical.
Yes, well, that's good, that's why you have to be voice.
Dusty data.
There you go.
Other questions?
I have another question for Donna, but not about this, so I don't,
I was, this is not so much a question, but more a statement, and that's a rhetorical statement. And that, so we have this target set by the state, and then we have the YS results. It would be interesting to think about what the YS target is, so that we're not just comparing ourselves to whatever the state says, and then that's a whole different question.
Yeah, no, but the targets change every year.
Right, but what is the
And then their
expectation of
target, yeah.
target from
Yeah.
us as a school district?
When I would suggest, Sean, that focusing on target's important, but I think let's focus on the assessment as well.
Yeah,
The
right.
assessment
Yeah,
is the real
exactly.
problem. Ultimately,
Yeah.
when we're expecting 34% of the kids statewide to pass the test.
Yeah, I know.
That says a lot about the
Yeah, and
assessment.
we're excited because we got 43%.
Right.
Well, it's 34% of special education.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and it's a little misleading too,
Right.
because there's a target on that test for that year. So they want 34 some odd to hit the target for that year.
Which also should.
And then they set their target based on that.
Yeah.
So two different targets can confuse you.
Yeah.
Well, and the other piece of this is, so speaking to Sylvia's point about special education students, special education students were 2 years ago, were required to meet 75% efficiency. So it's not about the special education or non-special education, it's about raising the target based on
whole
the assessment
target,
and
yeah.
changing it every year, which is essentially what we've done.
Yeah.
And it applies to, really all kids in different
Everybody.
subgroups. Yeah, I mean, the target's a little different from special ed, but still, it's like, it's a moving target like crazy. And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later too.
Steve?
so Donna, and very quickly, and I don't need to belabor it, but did you have an opportunity to talk with that faculty member at Antioch?
I did, well, I talked to a faculty member, complete side conversation, I'm so sorry, everybody.
Yeah,
I was actually gonna put that in here, but I hadn't heard back.
that's fine, you
Yeah.
can just tell me yes, or, and things
Yes.
are, conversations are ensuing, or no,
Yes.
not yet.
Yes.
Yes, good, thank you.
What do you guys bring?
You're not in a need-to-know situation.
That was strange. No, someone had called about food service stuff, and they just, food service, and it was, I think, part of the wellness committee discussions. And there was somebody who was a faculty member at Antioch who was contacted, or has contact with somebody else who was they have a grant and they're looking at food services in different school districts. They have a grant to do an actual assessment. And we talked a little bit because I had emailed her and said, well, could you call me? I want to hear a little bit more because I wanted to know what she was talking about exactly, because she was talking about her friend,
Right.
hooking her friend up with you guys. And she hadn't called back, but she probably didn't know who it was since I knew her in the district. So then I called her and we talked, and she's like, oh yeah, it made sense. So she gave my phone number to that person so I could talk to them directly.
This is also connected to some of these discussions about a commercial kitchen maybe in town. This faculty member contacted me initially, and then Donna very graciously
I
said.
remember that. I think she copied me enough
Yeah.
on that. Wow,
Right.
I remember that.
So we'll see, if they have anything that would be helpful,
Yep.
useful to us and to them. That's it.
Other questions? Okay, good, thank you very much. We're going to move into the treasurer's report and recommendations, the financial report.
I don't have a lot to report on for the month of August. We received this is the second half of 2016, and we received our final real estate tax payment for the year, and everything came in right around projections, so there was not really anything exciting, it wasn't really above or below. We received our semi-annual casino tax payment on August 31st. It's $17,823. And then just because I put it in the packet, if you could scroll all the way down to the very last page. You should have paged down, Keith.
I don't know where that is.
This is just, since the inception of the casino tax, this is the amount of money we received. So we got the biggest increase the very first year, And then it's really kind of stayed around $18,000
And this
for
is the-
3 years.
And then, is that the annual or the
This
semi-annual?
is the semi-annual,
So
so
doubles-
$35,000
$35,000 a year, yes. And where does that line up with the projections we were told?
Oh, I don't know.
That's a rhetorical.
It's
so
really saving
much-
public education.
Yes. I
It
think
really
that's
is.
correct.
It's so much lower than what it's supposed to be. I mean, the whole thing was just, even if we had some amount of growth,
Yep.
we have no growth whatsoever in 3 years. So that's not a very good sign. These casinos have been around this long and we're not receiving any additional
Can I ask one
money. And
question
the
about
economy seems to be turning around a little bit, yes.
Is it, they're actually growing, but the distribution is said that like other districts are getting a lot more and we're getting just the same
No,
amount?
it's
or
a
is it
statewide per pupil
statewide?
amount.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Can we buy lottery tickets with it?
Whatever investment actually.
Yeah, there are. Let's go
Yeah.
get more. Maybe
Not a
that's.
bad idea. It's a good experiment. We know it, 17 into lottery tickets and see what the payoff is.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay. The other thing I really wanted to report on is, since budget's gotten up and running, just a little bit about technology and, I mean, poor Jacob. Our technology budget used to be out of the permanent improvement fund. It used to be $25,000 per building. We're up to about almost $40,000 per building. And it's coming out of the general fund now, so it continues to grow. But we are on a nice replacement cycle, so I mean, everything is very organized and it's working out very well. Jacob's got everything in spreadsheet and organized what we need to replace. One of the things we're going to really start working on this year is we've gotten into this good replacement cycle and keeping up with getting, you know, computers where they need to be. But we don't have a lot of, we haven't allowed for any budget for just parts and for things where Jacob, if something breaks down, he replaces it with one that we already have and tries to recycle what we have, but that's not necessarily working out so well because we need to have some other backup plans. So anyway, Jacob and Donna and I have been working together on just setting a budget also in addition to what we're spending every year for those replacement parts. And then the other one is for, we've got big pieces of equipment, servers and switches that are very expensive that we're running on old antiquated equipment. So what did we just buy?
Switch,
A switch, which costs like over 10,000, right?
close to 14.
It was
And how many more switches do we have to buy?
6.
As soon as possible.
But they won't all be 14, but there will be one that, yeah, it's, there's,
We have to buy those ASAP, because if one of them breaks down again soon, it could be days, we could be down for days. And that's where we are.
they're important.
Yeah.
So we are.
And those could come out of the permanent improvement fund. The one that we bought, I took out of the permanent improvement fund because it will definitely last for over 5 years. But it's just, I really want to make you aware of how our technology budget is going. We need to try to still take things out of our permanent improvement fund as we can so that we're not putting this all in the general fund as it continues to grow. But like we're talking about buying a van, that would be permanent improvement. Our poor maintenance van, someday I'm afraid we're gonna find Craig in the middle of the road because he could fall out of it, it's got a hole in it. We've got possibly lawnmowers, we need a new bus still, we get $130,000 a year.
And the vans.
And our vans and roofs and all the things that we need to be looking at, and $130,000 a year is just not a lot of money, so.
Buses.
Yep. Okay, that concludes my monthly reports. I will move into the appropriation, which is a separate one. I just scanned in, it's not in that file.
Any questions about the monthly report?
It's the very first one. Okay, this is what you will approve on the board agenda tonight. And this is the budget for the year. So the top is the general fund, 5-year forecast area. And then I also budgeted for the remaining funds. Now, September 8th is the absolute earliest board meeting we can possibly have, and I started panicking back in July about this, but I am tooting my own horn right now because I have spent many late nights and weekends getting this budget done, and this is a good, solid budget that I'm bringing to you today. It's done. I'm so relieved, but I feel good about it. I didn't want to bring. We had looked at our meeting on the 22nd as a backup for you to possibly approve the budget, but I wanted to get it done. I put everything else on the back burner because Melissa she's not working here anymore, and I really need to do her job and then some other things in my job that I'm not doing. So having this out of the way is wonderful. So I'm going to go over general fund here in just a second, but there's really no changes to the budget that I have anything to discuss. When I budget the permanent improvement, I budget for basically just needs that we have around the buildings, and I just kind of set the same budget there so that we look at what we want to plan for that year and see what we want to spend the money on. But we've done a lot of flooring replacements and other things around the buildings. That all comes out of permanent improvement, parking lot repairs. We need to look at roofs and some other pressing needs this year. So I go ahead and budget for it, and then we may not spend it on what I thought we were going to spend it on. But I look at us potentially spending the $130,000 every single year. Plus Jacob's switch came out of that. The lunchroom fund, we've been very fortunate the past couple of years to have really no increases in our cost to Sodexo. We haven't lost that much money. I don't know what our costs are going to be now that we do have basically another supervisor that's spending more time with us than what we've had for the past year and a half. That could cost us a little bit more. We'll have to see how that fares out at the end of the year. But I think having the help on hand is far more worth what the additional spending that we have, because we really need that supervision. So Donna's been working a lot with this girl Michelle, and everybody seems to like her. They think that she's doing a good job, and she's working well with Benita and Jacob. Jacob's nodding. Yes, we need to have Jacob happy too with the whole new point of sale system. But I mean, not a lot of complaints. Everything got off to a pretty good start. Our Title 6B and Title 1 and Title 2A allocations, they just keep getting smaller and smaller every year. We are at $102,000 for our Title 6B special education funding, or our Title 1 reading resource center that we have. We're at $102,000. When I first started here, we were at $130,000. It's just decreased significantly. Title 6B, for some reason, hardly ever gets touched. We are getting around the same amount of money, but we haven't had any increases. And that Title 2A, we just use that money to pay for any teacher that we may be maintaining to keep class sizes lower. It used to be called class reduction money, but you can use it for other things, but we still use it for our class reduction money. But $15,000 on a teacher is not even a third. It's hardly anything at all. So that's the rest of the budget. If you'll go to the second page, I just want to briefly talk about, I think given that we just went through negotiations and the big focus was what's this going to do with the budget, once I have all of the teachers and staff in at what they are going to be paid this year, and then I could budget that, which was my goal, is to get that first payroll in September, and then I can budget out the rest of the year. Now, there will be some things we have to change here and there, but this budget is pretty accurate for salaries and wages and fringe benefits. So I just wanted to show you that where we're at right now with what I budgeted for the year and where we were at back in May and what we had talked about over the summer when we were negotiating. So you can see the effect that negotiations had on the budget. But if you look down at the bottom in the shaded area, our net change to the budget is an additional $62,000. And the reason is when we were talking over the summer, I was doing projections, I estimated somewhere in the nature of $140,000 to do the what we had agreed upon with the unions, which is the step restoration and beginning steps again, and also having a 1.5% raise on the salary schedule. And I estimate that to be additional $40,000. But what has happened is I was able to offset that. We spent over $100,000 in legal fees last year, and I don't anticipate that happening, right, Eli? It's not gonna happen. So I really the biggest change is me lowering those costs. I lowered them by $60,000. So that's why we have a big difference between what I was saying is gonna add to the budget. So that's still leaving $40,000 in legal fees. I'm anticipating we won't even use that. We are not negotiating, we don't have anything going on right now, Mario doesn't, knock on wood. But I mean, nothing is going on right now that in hopes that we won't use all of that money. So everything else, the budget is pretty on target from where we were before.
So that's really the change in these numbers, is you also then putting in the different amount for legal fees as a,
Yes.
that's what makes
If
that
I had
switch
not
around.
changed that and
Okay.
just kept it at 100,000, we'd be up
Okay.
by $120-some thousand.
Okay.
Very close to what I had projected. And some of the differences are just having the new staff coming in and people taking insurances and not taking insurances and trying to get all of that stuff worked in that you don't know over the summertime. So I want to show you and show myself that we came close to what I thought we were going to do. And then when I do the projection, now I'm going to have more time to do the October forecast, and I'll be able to look at where we're going to be at the next year. Because we didn't talk about that too much because that was just too hard to do. I have to do those projections with current staff and see who gets the step restoration and all that. So I'll be able to spend a little more time on that, having this budget done. But I feel comfortable with the budget, and it's on the agenda for your approval tonight. And I will, as I always do, periodically throughout the year, I may bring a budget revision, but I always tell you what I'm changing and why.
So should we table that? Was that the idea? Kidding, that was, I just
Don't
wanted
you
to-
dare.
Do we have any questions for Don? I just have one question. The House Bill 264, when are we done?
That one
How
is
many more years?
2021. We make the last payment.
Oh,
It's
okay, so we still have
$75,900
7
a year. It's supposed to be interest-free, but we pay a little bit of interest, and the last payment is March of 2021.
So we're still paying on that bond, but we're also still paying on,
That one goes,
Our
when does that,
voted
that,
bond. That
I
one's
wasn't even gonna ask about that one, that one's
2026,
great. What's that one?
I think.
Okay, so I guess 10 years, 10 more years, yeah. Okay, so, no questions, then we'll move into, we need to approve the permanent
And the dollar
appropriations.
amount's at the bottom of that page. It's $9,682,521.78, so that's for all the funds, the budget for all the funds.
Okay.
The one thing I don't have here, I should make a note of,
That's what gets filled in on the line on the?
Yes.
Okay.
is since we're still getting the Deeper Learning Training Center up and running, I don't have a budget in there for it yet because the state still has not approved the fund that I requested. We approved that on July 21st, and I have not received word back that the state has allowed me to add that fund. That's one thing I'm going to do tomorrow is call and find out why. But I can't budget for it until I actually am allowed to use the fund. So when I do that, I'll probably do a budget revision, but that will also be a revision to, I will be putting in an estimated resources and also an estimated budget, so.
So I guess I would also say it doesn't include grants or any contributions that might come in that we're not aware of already.
No,
Yeah.
this is
none-
what I'm
none
aware
that.
of right now.
Okay.
And I always put in a little cushion for extra grants that we get throughout the year. Because we get a lot of smaller grants.
All right, could I have a motion to approve the budget that was presented to the board?
So, second?
No more questions? Roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Sylvia.
Yes.
All right, budget passed.
Budget approved.
Thank you very much. We're moving to superintendent report recommendation.
okay, now we could have easily put the advancement plan update from Don at the very beginning of the meeting, but we really wanted her to sit through the
To
whole
sit
meeting.
through.
Yeah. So,
The sights, the sounds, the thrills.
The seaweed. It's not too late.
so let me set this up, just the actual presentation, but then also sort of an overview very quickly. Don's just going to talk to you a little bit about where we are at this point, what's been going on since she started in June, and where we are right now, and talk a little bit about our goals and what we're trying to do as part of the, the Advancement Community Relations Office. And then also, It is, it was shared with me, I don't know if it was shared with
I
everybody
didn't
else.
I don't
see
see
it,
it,
but that's
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
It's just a presentation from, So I think, and then if you have any questions, we can kind of answer them after, from there. So we can put it in the Google Drive after we're done if you'd like, so. All right, so I'll turn it over to Don.
Take it away, Dawn.
Should I address the board from here or
It's up
stand?
to you, it's up to the board.
I think, I mean, whatever I'm comfortable with you just hanging out
Okay.
right here. I don't think.
All right. Okay, so this is my plan. You can advance to the next slide. So we have 3 main goals for this first year for the advancement department. One of those is just to establish the infrastructure for the office because we really don't have anything in place to support any development activities at this point. The second goal is to raise approximately $150,000 through an annual campaign and also through securing grants. And then also trying to set the stage for an endowment fund that would be populated down the road. So this is kind of like in order of how I'm approaching each of these things. Next slide. So in terms of establishing the infrastructure for the office, on the left-hand side are the things that I've been able to accomplish in my first 90 days. So met with Mario to really talk about what our goals are for the first year in terms of how much we think I might be able to raise and what the strategies are going to be to achieve those goals. At this point, it's pretty much a shot in the dark because it hasn't been done before. So this is really our baseline. We're going to see what happens and then hopefully build on that every year. I did purchase a donor software system so that I can begin populating my database and using that to help me with tracking donors and information and stewarding those. It has a lot of different capabilities. At this point, I'm probably not using, 70% of them, maybe 90%, but it's definitely got room to grow. So I think that it's going to be a good software system for us going forward. I had to coordinate quite a bit with the Community Foundation since they are housing and administering our fund. Essentially, they are doing all of the stewardship, and we have to really figure out how we're going to get funds into that account, how we're going to share data. So it just really requires us to work pretty closely. And so far, that's been great. They've been very, very supportive and very cooperative with that piece. I've also been working really closely with the Yellow Springs Alumni Association, trying to get that up and running. And I've built some web pages, one for the advancement department on the Yellow Springs Schools website. I also built one for the Alumni Association. Each of them features a Donate Now button, and the Community Foundation helped to set that up so that that Donate Now button goes directly to the Community Foundation. And it goes to a landing page that just has our fund. You don't see all of the funds that the Community Foundation offers, so that was really helpful. It also includes places for people to sign up for our e-newsletter that we're going to be doing this year for the first time with our communications person, Megan Anthony. And so that just gets people engaged in what we're doing, and just that's kind of one of those cultivation kind of things. Also built a grant repository. So the thinking behind this is to just have a collection of all of the past grant applications that we've submitted so that when teachers or folks like myself go to apply for other grants, we don't have to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch. You can see what a successful grant application looks like. And I submitted and was approved for a Miller Fellow for this year. So in October, I will interview and hire someone who will work for 10 hours a week for 3 semesters and 40 hours a week for their co-op semester. So that is to be determined. So still to do in the infrastructure side, I'm still working on the case statement. It's kind of tricky trying to figure out how to really craft the message that the message for support and the case for support. There's a lot of things that I needed to catch up to speed on. There are a lot of things that were kind of happening before I got here. So my plan is to finalize that in the next couple of weeks. That's really going to be the basis for a lot of our grant applications and appeal letters and things of that nature.
I'm also working on convening a development committee. I've sent out invitations to several people. I've gotten some yeses. We're trying to find times to meet now. We're going to try to meet before the 30th of September. And then I'm just going to start with the folks that I have and then continue to recruit as need arises. I figure it's best to start with a small group that I can manage pretty well before trying to start too big and it gets kind of unwieldy. Activate the Alumni Association board. So there is a board. They have met a couple of times. I've been to the meetings. I use the verb activate because up until this point, they've been engaged in a lot of conceptual thinking, and I think they've been waiting for someone to be hired in my position. Well, now that I'm here, I kind of need them to, like, we need to go. And I need to be able to, like, mobilize them and get them started on some of the things that need to happen in order for this Alumni Association to take off. Because the Alumni Association is, like, a key strategy in the development plan because it's a huge untapped market at this point. So that's an ongoing conversation. I work really closely with the president and the vice president of the Alumni Association and the secretary. Finalizing the stewardship plan with the community foundation once donations are coming in, just making sure that we're really coordinated with how we're interacting with donors so that there's not duplication of efforts, we're not omitting anyone or I don't know if you can overthank someone, but really just want to make sure that that process is seamless from the donor's perspective. And then I have to recruit and train the fellow to be able to support me in my efforts this year. Next slide. All right, so raising $150,000 in spin down funds. So these would be funds that would support PBL activities for the current school year. Or possibly the next one, depending on the timeline of when these funds actually come in. So the primary vehicle for doing that will be an annual campaign. And I see this as happening in 3 phases. So the first phase would be an appeal to parents of current students. And that I'm thinking is going to take place within the next month. By October, I want that out the door. Phase 2 will be the community outreach. So it would be a larger community-wide mailing and the marketing that kind of goes with that. And included in that is the Giving Tuesday campaign. So Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So it's Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday. So you have any money left over. I'm sorry, and Small Business Saturday. Yes, you have any money left over after that, you give it away on Giving Tuesday. So I'm working with several of the nonprofits in town. We're trying to band together, have a consolidated message, encouraging people to donate to nonprofits in Yellow Springs on that day. And so that will be part of the community phase of the annual campaign launch. And then the third phase is going to be alumni, because right now we're really working on trying to identify who those alumni are, where they are, how we're going to reach them, how we're going to bring them in. And so until I can develop some sort of relationship and identify those people, I'm not really prepared to ask them to contribute. So I'm thinking that that's probably going to happen closer to the spring. Then, well, you know what, let's do this. Can you advance to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So, well, and let me pass this around too. So Mario and I were talking about trying to find a number that we were going to shoot for this year. So thinking about what we need in order to fulfill our wish list of things to support PBL activities in a given school year. And in the sheet that's coming around, in the first column under 16-17 costs, are some projections for what we might want to invest in during the school year in order to continue the PBL effort. And in total, that comes out to about $125,000. So it includes things like the annual stipends for the PBL coaches, staff professional development and attendance at conferences, the maker spaces, staff PBL projects, and eventually student trips. We didn't include that this year, but that is something that we do want to support down the road. The staff trips to High Tech High, that was something that was in the 15-16 budget. I'm not 100% sure that that's going to stay, that line item is going to stay there, but, you know, ballparking it, we're looking at $175,000 a year that we would want to raise money for an annual spin down. So that's where the 150 came from. So here I have a gift range chart, which essentially is just a tool for helping me figure out how many people do I have to ask for money and how much do I have to ask them for in order to reach this target. So in the sheet in front of you is essentially a copy of this. However, I've included in the last column the prospects needed. And the literature says that it's about a 4-to-1 ratio. So if I want to get $100, I need to ask 4 people and probably one is going to give it to me. So I've got to ask a lot of people for some money this year. And hence the 3 phases, right? So that's really what I'm shooting for. And again, it's complete conjecture at this point. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what this is going to look like, but it's going to be really cool to collect the data so that we can see where we start from, so that next year when I do this, it'll be based on reality and not just, you know, an idea. But for now, this is kind of what we're aiming for, and it helps to give me a little bit of structure so that I know where I have to go in terms of the kind of gifts that we're looking for. So I've actually included this on the website. I had an FAQs document that's on the advancement webpage for people who might have questions about, you know, what an annual campaign is, or why we're doing it, or, you know, what the money is going to be used for. The last thing that would go, actually, I'm gonna hold on to that for a second. Let's go back, Mario, please, to this goal. So another part of this goal is to secure grant funding. And initially we were thinking anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 a year. And right now, some of the things that we've got in the hopper possibly is a STEM grant that's for the State Library Association. There's no due date for that at this point, but we're anticipating that they're going to issue the RFP this year, and there's a maximum $50,000 ask. So we're going to go for the max for that, and we're going to use that to support makerspace creation. There's also the Lowe's Toolbox for Education grant. They have smaller ones that go up to $5,000, but they also have a larger one. You can request a max of $25,000. And we're going to work, that one's due at the end of this month, so I'm going to be working closely with Matt Hausch and Eli Hurwitz on fleshing out the project design for that and what we're going to be asking the money for. Most likely it will be makerspace, but it will be for activities here in Mills Lawn. So anything that I bring in for grant funding is going to count towards that $150,000, hopefully. So, you know, that line item for makerspace creation, hopefully we can, you know, knock that out with grant funding, and then you know, the rest of it will come from the annual campaign. So that was kind of our thinking on that goal.
I want to add that I think a couple things. We're talking about the Dayton Foundation, Springfield Foundation. So if you go back to, if you look at the sheet here, you know, some of the other items on this list, a lot of those are going to be funded by the STEM grant or the library grant. But if we went to a foundation potentially for dollars, they could fund student trips or some of these other things that we need to do. So this just want to interject that. I apologize.
Thank you very much.
And can therefore I interject, when you're thinking about grant funding, are you also thinking about things that come out of the state, like straight A grants? Okay, so it's not, you're not only looking at the kind of private philanthropic.
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, we're looking at the gamut. I mean, at this point, I don't even know if there's going to be another straight A.
No,
but if there were to be, yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
For example.
For example, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that we're running into with a lot of the state grants is that we don't have the free and reduced lunch threshold sometimes to qualify for those. They, you know, a lot of times they reserve those grants for more needy populations. So, which forces us to look more towards the private and community foundations, but we're definitely looking at all avenues.
The other piece is the straight A grant and some of those grants like that have been the most competitive grants you can possibly engage in. far more competitive than any of these other grants that we go for. And so I've heard a lot of people that are experts in this work who said, you shouldn't even be going for state grants. You should be using that same amount of time towards private grants and foundations, because it's a waste of time statistically to go for these straight grants when, really it's a bigger challenge for sure. So, not that we shouldn't go for them, but I think it's more challenging, so.
But now you have a professional grant writer on your
Right.
staff, so those statistics, no, I'm just.
Significantly.
No, that's, yeah.
We're hoping that's.
Right, exactly. Now I gotta put my money where my mouth is.
Can I interject to the grants question? There's a great resource in Senator Brown's office in Cincinnati. The person is there to help organizations identify grants that they might be able to go after. So I'm happy to connect you with that individual.
Sounds
And
great.
you provide the criteria that you've already laid out, and they will pinpoint what they're kind of eligible for.
That would be a wonderful resource. Thank you. Okay, last slide, I think. Yeah, that one. Okay, so the third goal is to set the stage for an endowment fund. That's going to entail doing some major gifts campaigning. I'm not quite there yet, if I'm being completely transparent. Major gifts, asking it's a whole other animal than an annual campaign, and it really is about relationships. And right now, I'm from here, I know a lot of people, but I don't have relationships like that with people where I can just ask them for a major gift at this point. But the goal is to be working towards that, and I am working towards that, from the beginning. But I don't think that I'm gonna be in a position to do that myself until spring at earliest. In the meantime, I can always be supporting others to do such things if any board members wanted to had any prospects in mind, or Mario, for example. But at this point, it's really more about identifying who those folks are, cultivating those relationships, and nurturing those relationships until we get to that point. And I've heard that that can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months for an individual prospect. So it's something that I'm working on. And the reason why I'm aligning major gifts with the endowment fund is because my thinking is that when we solicit these major gifts, we're going to be selling them on supporting this endowment fund. This isn't going to be funds that are going to be used for this year to support these things. This endowment fund is going to be to, support the district for, the future. Hopefully, the interest that we earn on that endowment fund is going to support at least one position. That would be the goal. So that's that last little box on this page here, where by 2026, we would want at least $2 million in this endowment fund, projecting 3.5, which is pretty conservative, right? That would generate about enough money to support a staff position. So at this point, it's really, it's really high level, kind of pie in the sky, but that's what we're going for. That's what we're aiming for at this point. Other duties as assigned. Marketing and communications. Been working closely with Megan Anthony on, the newsletters, and I plan to continue to do that. Social media. I really see my job as really tied to that because I'm selling the district, I'm selling the brand, and she's helping to craft that message. So we work pretty closely together. The Deeper Learning Training Center, I'm working on scheduling the visits, trying to identify opportunities for staff to travel elsewhere to conduct training, or for people to come here to receive training from our staff. And that may entail identifying grant opportunities also to support some of those activities. But hopefully, and actually we have a couple of groups already set up to come here, and they are totally fine with paying the fee that we've established for this year. So, the hard part is just doing the scheduling so that it's as unobtrusive to teachers and students as possible. And then the student internship program is something that's going to be a little bit further down the road, but I have been speaking with a local business to possibly develop such a student internship program for high school students, maybe this spring, around graphic design and things of that nature. So it's not something that was really on my plate for this year, but the opportunity came up, so I figured we might as well move forward with it. So those are kind of some of the other things that I'm working on in addition to developing the campaigns. The end. Any questions?
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Because your official start date was June 1?
Yes.
June 1, so it's been June, July, August,
It's been about 90
3
days.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for this update.
You're
Spent the
most
first
welcome.
week in Indiana.
Indiana.
And she's moved her family, she's done a lot of other things in the process as well the past 3 months too, so.
Can I interject? So you said at the outset that you were having some trouble, or that you were finding it challenging to craft the statement that you wanted?
Yeah.
So is that something that the board ought to look at before it goes out? And reciprocally,
And provide
I'm
feedback.
happy to help, just individually, if that would be of any use. But I wonder,
Yeah, it's interesting because, we've been working on this case statement for probably about 3 years now, maybe 4 years at times. And Dawn's seen all the drafts and she's seen what they look like. And so we've had lots of discussions about this. I think that's not a bad idea, Steve, honestly. I think when Dawn has something constructive, I think it'd be great to get feedback from the board from a draft at least.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and I think that's what you're suggesting.
right,
I will interject that, one of the things we talked about was trying to get a real mentor for Dawn. And it's been okay, it's been hit or miss a little bit at this point. We are officially, I've decided last week we're gonna move forward and try to actually get a small contract going with Linda Butler, who, remember we talked months ago about Linda, maybe even a year ago, actually, her involvement potentially with this development idea, and we thought about, so do we want to hire somebody in Dawn's position outright, or do we want to have Linda come in and kind of help us construct things for a year, and then we'd hire Dawn after that, and so we opted to do the former. And I think we just had a meeting with Linda, Dawn and I did, and really kind of hit it off pretty well, and I think Linda would be a great mentor for Dawn. I think it would really help Dawn in terms of getting going and give her the support she needs to get things off the ground. So we're going to contract with Linda short term here, maybe even as soon as the next few weeks. Well, definitely in the next few weeks. And Linda will be able to help, I think, with a lot of the things that are, the challenges of starting a brand new office, really, and from scratch, which are quite daunting and challenging for anybody.
And if I could interject, there aren't a lot of models out there for what we're
that's
doing.
going to be my next question, because you and I talked about that over coffee, that there are a small number
Yeah.
of public school districts that have started this, and I wonder if you've had a chance to just touch base with any of them, just to, sort of trade their stories.
No. I mean, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, there are a lot of schools that do what we're trying to do, but they're not public schools.
Right.
Or
Okay.
they're
Oh,
a
yeah.
public school, but their foundation does all of their stuff. And, they have elements, but nobody's doing exactly like we're doing it. So it is really forging a new path in a lot of ways, as you all know. But it definitely makes it kind of tricky sometimes when you're trying to figure out the right way to do something, which I think is the reason why I was having so much trouble with the case statement. Because, you have all been here, I think, for the most part, during the process. So, you've traveled and you've lived the story and you've heard the feedback from the community, and I'm kind of coming in afterwards and I'm trying not to step in any landmines, but I know that they're there, and so I'm trying to figure out like what is it that, how do we want to package this so that it's most palatable to the masses. So I appreciate that offer of help.
Questions? I have one question. The PTO and boosters and that group, does that just fall outside of your portfolio, or is it a group that, like the Alumni Association, you're going to want to meet with and talk to? Because I know they're planning fundraising activities.
Right. Yeah, so my approach to the boosters and the PTO at this point is I am here as a resource. I will share my resources with them, such as the database, being able to do, like accept web payments and do more online giving sort of functionality. You know, anything that I can do to support them in their fundraising efforts, I have offered myself to them in that capacity. I think in the future, we may shift our approach to how we're going to deal with the other fundraising, but for right now, I'm probably not going to tackle that. Yeah, because you know, they have their thing going and they're doing really well with what they're doing. So at this point, it's just about establishing relationships and being helpful.
That's great. The parents, community, alumni. So, you know, some people are going to fall into all three categories, but I could see board, former, current, as a segmented category as you think about targeting asks.
Okay. Yeah.
Because of the commitments, but we have a whole plaque there of former board members and we're going to leave a legacy to this great school district. So
Okay.
I would encourage you to look at that.
Thank you.
Take a picture of
Picture of the plaque.
So I just want to say, and this is not directed to Dawn necessarily, but I think it would be a good idea, at the risk of suggesting more meetings, that the board have a work session this fall to talk about some of these things in more specific, or at least to have a more fulsome discussion.
So is that part of? No.
That's not part of the work session.
It's not part of the one in
Right now, it's
Well, it's
okay,
not
it
right
could
now.
potentially.
Well, that's going to crowd it, I think. I will throw it out there, we can sort out the details at some other juncture, but I
Are
think
we
it would
ready
be,
for that yet?
I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah, and I think from perspective, like what role can we play in helping?
That's where we start, right? We officially kind of pushed the stone down the hill, so do we just watch it? Or are we supposed to, I think that's where we should start that conversation.
Well, that's a good suggestion.
And I think that's a good idea. I wonder, kind of going off what Anne's maybe suggesting, I don't know, maybe not, but I think maybe early winter might be a better time for that. Because I do think what's going to happen over the next few months is we're going to get a ton of support and really help the work. And I'd like to see how that goes and develops and progresses.
Sure.
And I think if we get too many hands in the fire at one, that's not the right analogy, but you know what I mean. I think it might irons in the fire. That's what I'm trying to say.
There's a hand of like
The hand is something else. It's not a hand thing. It's irons in the fire. That's what I was trying to say. Too many irons in the fire could dilute and really disrupt it. Not as help as much as we'd like right now at this point. So, but I don't think that should go away. I think it's a great suggestion. Maybe just waiting until January for that would be like a good time, I think, to do it.
Sure.
So I think by then we should have a lot more of an idea of where we're going and the specifics, and it'll be a better time.
Yep.
Excellent.
How do you feel?
I'm going to defer to your judgment on this respect, but I do appreciate the offer, and I think it's a good idea to get some clarification on how the board wishes to support this particular effort and how we can work together on that during this first year.
Great. Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
My
for the
pleasure.
presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
so we're back to superintendent.
Superintendent.
Yeah.
No, I'm afraid she took up all your
I
time.
know, I gotta tell you. So the interesting thing about today is, as you can see, I mean, today you've been able to see our entire district, administration talk today, which is really nice to see that, something that you don't usually get, and Megan's here now too, and so, really, really cool to have that in one meeting. So I'll try to speak as briefly as possible. I want to add one thing. Well, I did talk about Linda Butler. Don was talking about the Deeper Learning Training Center and the challenge of folks wanting to sign up. We have a real challenge right now with Urbana City Schools, who I think understand 80 staff members come see our
Wow.
schools and are willing to pay the
That
funds to
violates
do
the
it.
fire marshal limit, I think.
You all should know that I've worked out sort of a loose agreement with the Central Ohio ESC. They're going to essentially promote our Deeper Learning Training Center, and they're going to also promote, and we basically have given us carte blanche to create events that we want, professional development opportunities that they will promote, and we can actually lead those workshops at their facilities in Central Ohio and Columbus, and they will do the entire process for us and pay us at the rate that the board has already approved to do some of that work with them. So they'll do everything in terms of collecting the money, promoting the event. All we need to do is create the
So
content.
that takes the pressure off our buildings.
Significant pressure to our buildings. So we're right, but the challenge is, of the biggest pressure of our teachers having the time to be able to write the curriculum. I mean, Eli knows this personally, and to be able to actually do all that work is exceptionally difficult. That's the real challenge. And so we're trying to find ways to do that. But I think our coaches are excited about that work, and our teachers are. We just got to get moving on some of that. But Urbana is coming with 80 teachers, and we weren't sure about how to do this, and we're going to go forward with it, and we'll figure it out. We're going to have to create a whole different plan to make it work. I did talk to Eli about it in advance and say, what do you think? Is this something we can do? And there was sort of a belief that we could, but we have to come up with a different challenge of how we do it, and our coach is the same thing, so we're going to try it. I'm hoping it's not a complete disaster.
We can do anything.
Yeah, we
We are
figured it out.
amazing.
Because really, we have 50 staff members, 50 teachers here now.
Yeah.
There are going to be 80 of them coming
Right,
on
well,
2 different
yeah,
days.
right.
Logistically, it's a real issue,
Yeah.
You guys are fearless.
Well,
Everybody gets a buddy,
Yeah.
just like, it's a one-to-one thing with a teacher here.
Yeah. It's just not going to be the same model we usually do, which is a little fearful of trying to create a whole new model for more people. Okay, so let me move on to the next piece, facilities. Spent a little bit of time with that. I sent you my board report a little bit about this. But just a couple things for the community to know too. So I think I want to make sure I don't get too far ahead of the board with some of this work. And so I think it's the smart importance of next meeting we have in a couple weeks to make sure we really have a chance to think through this and ensure we're all clear on what our steps are going to be here and whether we're ready to move forward with that, because the next step is spending some money. I mean, it's not significant, nearly the significance of anything else, but it is spending some money to get some support from an architectural firm to help us with community engagement and exploration of our facilities and an evaluation of our facilities over the next few months. And so we need to make sure we get commitment. So we're going to have a work session in 2 weeks to talk about that. And if the board feels like it's the right move to still go forward at that point, we'll put an RFQ out there, request for qualifications, and we'll let that sit out there for about 2 weeks and hopefully get some qualifications from several firms that are interested in working with us. We know we have at least 4 that are very interested in working with us that I've talked to. And then after that, while that's happening simultaneously, we'll contact the Ohio Facilities Commission to get them to come out and do a free evaluation of our buildings, which would be a great thing that they do, and give us an idea of the need, maybe an idea of costs and what that would be worth, and all of these kinds of things, the value, and percentage state share would give, as Steve just said, and then we'll get that feedback back, and then we'll have a committee that essentially, after we get their RFQs in, we'll rank order each of the firms we get feedback from, and we'll take the top 3 firms, and we'll have an interview with the Board of Education at a meeting. Maybe it'll be a work session, maybe it'll be a regular board meeting, depending on what the board wants to do with that. And from that, the board will rank order those top 3 based on what the board feels most comfortable with. And then we start with the first, and I interview and sit down with the first, and we try to work out an agreement in terms of how the services, what we need from services, and how much it's going to cost, to try to come to agreement on the contract. And then if that doesn't work, we are supposed to go to the second best, and then if that doesn't work, we go to the third. And at some point, we come to an agreement with a firm, and then we submit the contract for board approval at the nearest board meeting after that. So my thinking is we can possibly get this done, assuming the board decides to move forward in September. We can possibly get this done and approved at a board meeting, November or December board meeting. We'll see how it turns out over the next few months. I don't want to rush anybody, but if somehow this process ends up that after the exploration process and after the community interest comes out that clearly the community wants to go forward, and somehow we community decides that they'd like to go forward with a levy on the ballots for approval, the earliest we could do that after a long community engagement process would be November of 2017. That process, by my best estimation, should take about a year. And so a November date is better than a December date, but December's not going to set us back too much, I don't think, if we're still looking at November of 2017 potentially. So again, this all depends on what the community ultimately wants, and that's why we have the whole engagement process in the first place, to evaluate our facilities, to explore options, and to gauge community interest and work forward with any of those options. So it'll be a long dialogue, several forums, all that kind of work as part of engaging the community in this process. So that's all I have to say about facilities. I don't know if you all have any statements or questions if you want to share.
Or, we had the one company that came last month, and
Right.
weren't we going to have another one?
So we were going to have another one, and what I said, I didn't mention this in my report, but the problem is, the original, and this is my mistake, the whole idea originally was to have a company come present to the board just so that the board could have an idea of what this process would look like, so to educate the board for informational purposes. Now, the problem is, I think when a company comes to do that, they often present a sale, essentially trying to get the board to commit to it, and that happened, I think.
Is this from last time when I wasn't here?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I wanted.
And so that was the idea, was them to really talk to the board about the whole process, what this looks like. Bringing a second company to do the same thing really did not fulfill the purpose. And so you're going to have, the companies will have plenty of opportunity to interview once we pick the final three with the board, and so it would just be redundant essentially to do that again with another group that came in. So that's the whole reason why we're not bringing anybody at this meeting, and I think it's the right way to this book. But I also think it was important to have the board hear from a company that does this, so they have an idea of what that process looks like. I couldn't do it justice like, Richard could, at least at that firm.
It gave us a good idea of what they were trying to offer.
Yeah.
What would be offered, what would we even looking for.
And from the groups I talked to, there are variations for what they do. I mean, Richley was an interesting process, but other companies had different processes that were slightly different. But really, most of those people had a 12-month plan essentially. That had different, usually had committees, other things involved. So you'll get all of that as we go forward and can decide to interview the top three candidates, assuming we go forward. So, any other comments or questions about facilities? Okay. The next thing I want to share very briefly is about the quality profile. So we've been talking a little bit about this the past few meetings as an alternative to the state report card. I want to show you kind of a little bit of a very, 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 very rough sketch of what this front two pages will look like. So Megan has been working tirelessly on this, as well as Don, and we've had several meetings to bang our heads against the wall about what this should look like. And this is going to be what I will say is this is going to be a fearless attempt to really try to get the first one out there in fall of 2016. It's not going to be perfect. There are going to be a lot of things we want to add, a lot of things we want to take away. We just don't have the data right now to really report qualitatively and in a way that we think is appropriate and accurate for what we want to measure. And so this fall there are going to be several surveys that go out that Don's worked on and Megan, we've all kind of worked together on these things, but that are going to go out to teachers, to parents, to our kids, and we'll report on a lot of that data next year. So that'll be kind of an annual thing we sort of start to incorporate as part of the quality profile going forward. But here's the cover page of what it looks like as of right now. Really very first draft. This is an alternative cover page. And if you have any feedback about one or the other, I picked this one, but maybe you all feel differently. I think Don liked this one better. I don't know.
That is, something happened in the PDF process there, because that was kind of, it's similar, but like the essence.
It wouldn't be all cutting.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then, so this is sort of the second page. What would go right here would be your picture that we're going to take tonight, but since we're not taking that
Those
picture.
people are pretty attractive.
Since we're not taking your picture tonight. And so you can see, this is sort of this will be the second page, and it has a letter from me.
Steve and I have the same email address apparently.
So we call it that.
That's very clever of you, I know.
So that'll be a good way as we go forward.
Any angry Steve messages of mine that come to you, you can keep those.
And I'll just leave it on this page for a second while I talk very briefly about what's going to be included in the actual profile as we go forward. So a number of different things. you have the content, we need the aesthetic, we're still working on that. The content's going to be, we're going to look at some academic indicators that we really think we need to focus on. So at graduation rates, acceptance, which by the way, we're going to get 100% graduation rate on the report card that's released whenever they decide to release it, which is amazing. Yeah, kudos to our entire
It's
district
coming
for
out
that.
next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yeah, the 15th.
We got some work to do. I thought it was October. Okay. All right. So interesting. Okay, well then I'll talk more about that in the next few minutes. Acceptance and persistence rates for colleges, U.S. News World Report ratings, ACT scores we can put out there, which are not reported on this point. Number of kids taking AP classes and exams in our high school. Number of kids getting college credits potentially for graduation. Number of kids reading at or above grade level based on our assessment data. Art awards that we've gotten, Scholastic Art Awards, which have been great for our community, which don't get reported on that darn report card, Student leadership, so we'll talk about various clubs and opportunities our students have engaged in throughout the school year. Innovation, so lots of PBL project examples, we'll get into that. Opportunities like clubs, memberships, offerings, the arts, student services, special education success, and the kinds of things we're doing in that area as well. And so all kinds of and including student services work as well in addition to that, so that kind of data will be included. Lifelong learning, so that's where we'll talk about a lot of our teacher successes and some of the great things our teachers have done. So the Deeper Learning Training Center will come out and some of the work around that. Staff achievements. Adaptability, so that's where we'll talk a little bit about fiscal stewardship, comparative data about our finances, which I think we have some really great data that talks about the bargain we get for per student expenditures in Yellow Springs versus other districts and how great it is. And open enrollment data, grant and grant support data, per pupil expenditures, things like that I think will be included. We'll have, so that's just kind of a brief update of what's going to be there this year. Next year we'll include a lot more of the qualitative data and some of the survey data we've had that we can put out there. And we think hopefully it'll measure better what we're trying to get at versus the state report card. What I want to add one more thing before we take any questions about this is the state report card that's coming out. So we have a state report card that's coming out next week, it sounds like. I think it's important to talk to the community about this because this state report card, across the state, the greatest districts across the state, the poorest districts across the state, even Yellow Springs, the data is going to be terrible. The worst data we've ever seen on any state report card in the history of state report carding in Ohio.
You mean the worst collection of data or the worst outcome of data?
The worst outcome of data reported, I should say. And so the reason for that is a couple things. First of all, we created a brand new test called AIR, a new AIR testing. So once again, 3 years in a row, we have test makers tests from completely different test makers for our kids. We had the original OAA test made by, anybody know? It wasn't Pearson, it was somebody else. And then we had PARC, which was Pearson, and now we have AIR. Tests essentially in our, so we've gotten 3 years, and during that 3-year time period, would you know that despite the fact that the test manufacturers and the tests being completely different, we still graded them and represented those scores the exact same way with an A through F grading scale. So an A to the layperson who watches this and who gets their report card in the mail and looks at it and says, ooh, we got an A in 3rd grade reading, doesn't necessarily have the information they need to understand that the A from this year means something completely different from the A last year, which means something completely different from the A the year before. Not only that, but to complicate matters even worse than that, is that the state randomly decided where they wanted to put their cut scores. And according to some folks who are in political office in the state of Ohio that I've talked to recently, they said that the state intentionally set the bar higher because they want to make sure that we are having rigorous standards for our kids. Well, I'm sorry, but when the state average passing rate is 35% for some of these tests, that's not rigorous standards. That's giving 3rd graders 9th grade tests, is what that's doing. And so somehow what we're doing is, and it's also saying to teachers, guess what, as hard as you worked with your kids, as great as you've done historically with your kids, maybe last year you got an A and you had the same quality work ethic with your kids this year, and the kids did just as well, if not better this year, but somehow you went straight from an A to an F. And the danger of that is it tells our parents and our teachers, sends a mixed message and inappropriate messages that are not accurate about the data at all. It tells our teachers that the work that they put in, which has been tremendously hard, is not valued, and that ultimately it's not, the scores don't the scores and the hard work they put in is represented as an F or a D or whatever the grade's going to be. And the truth is that is not accurate. Our teachers have done tremendous work and worked harder than they've ever worked. And I told them last week, this week at a meeting on Wednesday, when we had our late Wednesday, that, you know what, those test scores, they don't represent what you've done. And the truth is, we're going to get an F on our report card when it comes to K-3 literacy for the first time ever. K-3 literacy. Why are we going to get an F for K-3 literacy? Well, I don't want to go on too much about this, but this is a really important point that we need to discuss tonight because it's a big issue. K-3 literacy is based on, and as a statistician, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, Sylvia, because you're going to love this one. So K-3 literacy looks at kids who are on RIMPs, which is a reading improvement plan. So first of all, they have to be placed on a RIMP, which means Matt had to, and the teachers had to decide that this student was qualified to be on a RIMP. And if you remember the RIMP, what it's tied to the third grade reading guarantee and holding kids back who don't make enough reading progress in third grade automatically if they have a RIMP that says things. So we don't have an inclination in Yellow Springs to necessarily want to put more kids on RIMPs because we don't want to hold kids back or let the state tell us which kids should be held back and should not be held back. We want that to be a decision made by teachers, principals, and parents. And that ultimately that's where it should be made, not by the state of Ohio. Well, so anyway, so there's the RIMP issue. So kids on RIMPs have to make a year's progress or more in order to be able to pass or qualify as a point towards the final grade or score for the K-3 reading proficiency indicator. All right, and so what they use to measure how kids are successful is at the beginning of the year you have a diagnostic. Now every school can choose whatever diagnostic. There's a long list. How many diagnostics are on that list, Matt? You know? 7 or 8 official diagnostics, and so it comes from AIMSweb, MAP, we use STAR in Yellow Springs, and all these different diagnostics. And guess what? Each of these companies have different cut scores for what they say is proficient in third grade or second grade or first grade. And they're different. So AIMSweb says this is our cut score, Pearson says this is our cut score, STAR says this is our cut score. Well, not only are the tests very different, AIMSweb is completely different than STAR, but the cut scores are radically different, and they're all set by the company. So Yellow Springs has STAR. Cedarville has something else. I don't know what they use. Let's just say, what? iReady. So Cedarville's cut score is this, Yellow Springs' cut score is this, and then at the end of the year, guess what happens? We all took the same third grade reading air test. For the first time, by the way, our kids are taking this test. And there's a cut score that the state sets for air. Everybody takes the same end of the year test, everybody took a completely different diagnostic. And instead of comparing the STAR assessment results from the first diagnostic with the STAR assessment results at the end of your diagnostic and saying based on our own diagnostic that we used at the beginning of the year and the end of the year to decide which kids made it and which kids didn't, they compare our STAR test with the air results. And somehow they have enough statisticians and psychometricians that can figure out the connection between the air results for the first time being administered and their cut scores, and it made it a perfect cut score, and it perfectly connects and correlates with the cut scores for STAR, and it also correlates with iReady, and it also correlates with MAP, and it also correlates with AIMSweb, and so on and so forth.
If you try to do that for an education dissertation, you would get flunked.
So if your head's getting ready to explode right now, you understand the real problem and the complete illegitimacy of these test scores this year. And the issue is people are deciding on where they're going to live, what school they're going to send their kids to. Teachers are having, a lot of times, unfortunately, tying their self-worth and their value as educators to these test scores. Principals, the same thing in communities. It's ridiculous. And we've had enough, I think, across the state. And in fact, I was just on a phone call last week with a major leader of a major organization statewide who has said across the state this is a major issue, and superintendents are furious everywhere. And it is going to be a big problem that we're going to start working on across the state. But I'm going to go out and tell the message to our community. And we may decide to have a meeting over the next few weeks and bring our community in to talk about this. And the bottom line is that folks want to say, we want test scores and we want A's and B's on this illegitimate testing system, I think, then that's one thing. If they want us to continue to do the great work we're doing with our kids, which I think they will say that they want us to do, we're going to keep doing it because we think it's the most important thing for our students. We're seeing it anecdotally, we're seeing it in practice, and we don't think teaching to the test is the answer. And so we're going to keep moving forward with what we believe is right for kids.
I wish you could be a little more passionate.
What were you talking about?
In your passion, you were actually calling it a SCUT score.
That's SCUT?
You were calling it a SCUT score. I just wanted to point that out. But that comes, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Really, I get your point. And I knew that this was an issue statewide, but I also knew that you were really passionate about it. So here's my question. This quality profile, are you doing this as a alternative validation for what we're doing? Is that the objective of this?
The objective of the quality profile is to present a narrative to the community that accurately reflects what our values are in Yellow Springs.
It's more like an alternative demonstration.
What we think is important for our kids to be successful.
Okay.
And so it's about finding the data that our community embraces and believes in. It's about measuring what we're doing and seeing the adequacy and measuring whether we're actually getting done what we're trying to do. Because what we're trying to do and what the state is measuring in many ways are very different things. And so that's, some of it is the same, some is different.
So as fearless thinkers that we are you, do you foresee that could be, this profile could be used in future as an example of another way to evaluate if we could ever get to the point where we got rid of the standards?
Yeah, in fact, right now the state is supposedly doing this. They're going out to communities and they're having forums across the state to reevaluate how we're assessing schools, and they're looking at more qualitative indicators potentially that add to the report. My concern is they're just going to add to the report as opposed to subtracting some things that are really not essential, as opposed to looking at the entire assessments that they're using and reevaluating the assessments and getting better assessments. We're just going to add. And this is all part of the ESSA law that was passed. And my concern is I don't have a lot of faith right now in the Ohio Department of Education's ability to really be transformative and to really be progressive in their approach to this. I think they've talked a lot about it, but ultimately we've not seen the proof of their change. And so we have a legislator who's a local legislator, who's a senator who's chairing the education committee, who chairs the education committee, who said to me last week, Mario, just tell your community that these tests, that ultimately, don't worry about the tests, that really you guys need to keep doing what you're doing because what you're doing is great for the kids at Yellow Springs, and I agree. And so I think, we have strong, powerful legislators that are creating legislation around public education in Ohio right now. We're saying, keep doing what you're doing, Yellow Springs. This is the right way forward. This is an issue of a bureaucracy that is huge. So we have the State Board of Education that's ultimately supposed to be in charge. We have the governor's office, we have the legislature, and we have the Ohio Department of Education all vying for control about what's happening. The truth is, the governor's office is essentially running the education system in the state of Ohio. And unfortunately, the Board of Education has the least amount of influence over that entire process at this point.
I know you feel a certain urgency to get this edition out, sort of as quickly as possible. As we think about this going forward, I wonder if there are things we should think about adding which respond more directly to the kinds of things community people want to know. So, for example, are we going to include certain kinds of demographic profiles of our student body? Excuse me. Addressing questions of student and faculty diversity, which I think is an important question for a lot of people in town. I'm not suggesting that this.
No,
thinking about it in the future.
This is exactly what we need to do. That's the kind of feedback I think we want from the board and I think the community. So this is the first go. We're going to see the holes.
Right.
Let's do this, and then let's see what we want to add next year.
Right.
And then the sooner we figure that out, we'll have more time to collect the data and then track the data and see what it is. Because it's tough to get data now that we needed that would have been better collected 6 months ago or whatever it is. And the implication of collecting this data too is it puts a lot of pressure on the buildings too, because they're now having to go out and figure out exactly how many projects did we do, and then the teachers have to calculate it and send it back, and so it really, we need to make sure what we want is really what we want, because there's a lot of time behind collecting it.
Right. I can imagine as well, and I know this only at the high school, well, no, not just at the high school level, but I think in both buildings, the amount that, the culture that's been created and faculty and students work hard to maintain
around questions of tolerance and related sorts of things. People need to know that outside the classroom, this is the kind of education that's also going on. When the spike kids come in from the high school to the elementary school, and we're working on this, when, you know, that's sort of stuff, hard to measure, but it's the kind of thing I think a lot of people in town care about and would want to know about. So,
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Steve. So here's what I would suggest is at this point, if there's things you feel like are really, you're thinking off the top of your head, email it to me.
Sure.
And I'll
Okay.
make sure if we can get the data on here, we can, we'll try.
Well, I know,
If not, at least for
long-term.
future
Right,
years, we'll have a
exactly.
list.
Right.
And then we'll get together, Megan and I and Don over the next month or two, and once we get the profile out, and figure out what we want to collect for 17. And then we'll really go. Anything you all want to add? I mean, I know you're probably sitting there thinking I'm missing something that maybe we needed to include in our conversation, so. Okay, all right.
This is an important topic, and we probably could talk for another hour easily
Yeah.
and beyond, but I guess we should move on.
Maybe another night.
Maybe another
This
day.
is another work session.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I would love this work.
So we'll see what the reaction is to the community to the report card. But I do think we're going to try to get this out as soon as possible on the heels of that. And really, there's a narrative, and I'll include a message with that for the community as well, so they understand why we're doing this. Last thing is a sub-teacher update. Just very briefly want to share with y'all that, you know, we did find a physics teacher who's on the agenda tonight, and they're not on the agenda as a long-term sub, and the reason is this person is going to want to continue to sub for us after that time period. And if we just put them out as long-term sub just for a specific time period, then, you know, technically it's sort of, it go beyond that. And the other thing is, it's such a short time period now for that position that they're in there as a sub hire, and I can point out who they are when you get to that part of the agenda. The second thing is there's we've had a conversation with some professors at Wright State who are in town here, who are in the education department, who said we are in basically that all of their pre-service teachers have been hired. Which is great for educators, not so good for, you know, districts trying to hire subs and trying to really maintain, you know, a cadre of teachers who can come in and support teachers when they're out or when they're on, you know, leave or whatever it is. And so we're in a sub-crisis, I think, statewide. And so much to the point that the state, I think, is getting ready to try to come out with some policy language around suspending some of the rules around requirements for teachers at this point, or requirements for subs. And so there's really, this is the, I think we're in the middle of the highest, greatest sub-crisis I've seen since I've been in education. 15 years. We went from a situation 3 years ago where we had plenty of subs to now where I think we're in the worst sub-crisis we've been in since I've been around. So it's all that happened when the cliff happened in 2015, and then last year the same thing continued. And so people are just getting jobs, the economy's recovering, and all of that together has really caused a major, major challenge. So we need to work with the county. We need to work with other agencies that hire subs and do some of this work to really think outside the box about what we're doing. Because I think if we keep doing what we're doing, keep getting what we've been getting, and we may have a losing battle here. And so there are agencies that essentially work, as an example, with the Green Career Center, who do sub-services there, where the Green Career Center pays upwards of $125 a day per sub. And the sub gets $105 a day, I think, to work for them, and then the agency pockets the other 20. And so that's how they work. And the agency does all the hiring, takes care of the big conglomerate, and so they do that work and get the subs. And I think they have less of a challenge getting subs than we do. So that's a model.
Still tough.
$125 is a lot more than the $90 a day we're paying right now.
But we're paying
Other costs is
Other costs on
$100.
that
It's
night.
about $20, right?
And it would be 105.
Essentially, correct.
But you don't
yes.
want to compare something
Yeah.
to something that's not the same.
That's right. So we're going to talk about it at the next superintendent's meeting, which is coming up soon, and see what solutions other people are coming up with, and maybe see about seriously thinking about coming up with some collaboration around this and some shared services, because I'm not sure we can keep doing this on our own and be successful.
Yep. When we were on our trip in Michigan over the weekend, I saw billboards for a company that did subs. It's like, they were like, does your school
Like the national
district
crisis.
have? And they'd be like, that's what they provided subs to school districts. about multiple counties. Just in thinking about what you're saying, like, is there another way to have a solution that there's a centralized shared service?
It's like a temp agency,
Yeah.
essentially, for
Right.
substitute teachers.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
If you don't mind, before I'd want to see if Megan and Eli have any comment on this, because I know Eli's connected with other school districts. If that's an issue you're hearing from other people or not, or how you're hearing about it, Megan and other districts.
They're still not getting subs in Dayton. And they
Same
went,
issue in Dayton.
they went to this service
And they did
Is
this
it okay?
model.
and they're not getting subs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, the Career Center, I think, still has a tough time finding subs. So I mean, it's great to make it somebody else's problem, but I'm not
I mean,
not
that's all
sure
right.
how much
It still
better
becomes our
result.
problem.
Do we have students sub their own class or they Tim? That would be
I'm already
the
busy in
ultimate.
my office.
What were you saying?
All right.
Clark County did increase the number of subs that we had last year because we do it through the ESC, except for the city. The city does their own, but the Clark County ESC manages all the subs for all of our county schools. So when you go, you can sign up at one place, you can do everything and be signed up anywhere in the county, which I think is helpful because I understand in Greene County you have to do all of them individually.
That's what we're talking about
So
changing.
that was up a little bit.
They also, we hire a lead sub now at the ESC who in the fall does some training and recruitments. Last year she went to open houses and had like a table set up and told parents about it. You know, you can sub, had a little brochure and things like that. And then we did some training sessions. They made a handbook, like giving the subs information about each school that they might need to know to be prepared to sub. And we did have a little bit of success in increasing.
We talked about this last year, Green, I don't think it happened, but I think now this year,
Yeah.
we're going to be ready to work
Makes
together, I
sense.
think, on this, I think, so. And if not, maybe we would join Clark in some of their current work right now, so. Although the problem with that is, we're so far south that the subs
Yeah,
in
who are you
Clark,
gonna try to pull in?
people are traveling. you know,
geographically,
Geographically
yeah.
becomes a little bit of an issue for us, yeah. So, that's all for my report.
Thank you. Any questions, other questions?
Oh, one more, well, we'll talk about it when we get to something else, so we're good.
So we're going to move into the administrative consent agenda 4.2 through 4.4. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay. Any question? Is there anything you want to pull out? or
Yeah,
Talk about?
Yeah, I just was to say, you know, but I think the resolution of intent for the career tech is a repeat of last year. We think that the PBL Foundations is a good class, an important class, and so we have to, because of more state red tape, we have to pass a resolution that says we're going to do this. And then I think the classified sub pay rate issue, we really need to do this. I think we've been set at least for 7 years, and I think a lot longer on the same rates. And so particularly it's an issue for drivers right now, which is the crisis for sub drivers is just as great as the crisis for sub teachers, if not more. And so that's why we need to do what we can to be more competitive.
Any questions? Okay, roll call.
Ann,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Sylvia,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Okay, now we're moving into the personnel agenda, items 4.5 through 4.7. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All right, we'll just walk down these. Is there anything you want to pull out and talk about?
Yes, I wanted to, if it's okay with you, I just wanted to say that, let's see here, there's no questions from the board about any of this. There's a couple I want to point out. I just want to talk about supplementals for a second. So if you can see on the list here, a lot of these are brand new supplementals for this year. Some of them are like the Leadership Council, which we brought back after being gone for 6 years. Part of the negotiated agreement was to do that and commit to it for at least 1 year. And so I appreciate the work our team at negotiations did, the whole team, to work towards this. And then I think the other thing is we added a few supplementals like Lego League and Girls on the Run. And so I gotta tell you, if you have any kids at the elementary school right now, or even the middle school and high school, first Lego League, junior first Lego League, and robotics and FTC at the middle school, at the high school level, 8th to 10th grade level, have been blowing up. Like, it's created a major problem for our principals in many ways to try to figure out who goes on the team, because we've had 30, 40 kids sign up for a team of 10. And so the need is there.
What is FTC?
So FTC is the middle school to high school version of this Lego robotics. FTC is it, right? It's First Tech Challenge. So it's kind of like a start of creating your own major robot. And then they have a robotics for the upper grades kids, which is a big robot that does all kinds of really cool things. And so very cool work, but clearly the need was there. And I'm so glad we got it approved in the contract, because now we have the problem of a lot of kids interested, which is a great problem to have, that we're trying to work through and figure out how we can serve our kids and the need that our community has for this.
Cool. The board, do you have any questions for any of the items? Okay, roll call.
Sean,
Yes.
Sylvia,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
Motion passes. Board communications. So this is, we have a work session scheduled for September 22nd at 6 p.m. I raised a question with the board about maybe going back to 7 o'clock, but I will know tomorrow whether or not I can be here at 6. So
That's the Thursday, yes?
that is the Thursday.
You want to wait till you know for sure and then?
Yeah, that's all right. I'll know by tomorrow.
Good.
Okay.
And that works okay for you, Ann?
Does that?
Yes, I've already taken that time.
So yours was just like coming earlier, right? That was the real challenge, right?
Well, no, Thursday evenings are,
Oh, okay, the whole
bad
evening,
for
okay,
me.
gotcha. Okay, yeah.
so as long as I
Gotcha.
know ahead of time, I can make arrangements, so whether it's 6 or 7.
That's all right.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't
we're
affect-
planning,
it doesn't-
we're planning for
missing
2
out.
hours. Is that, I was
Yeah.
unclear on the amount of time. Okay.
So 2 hours.
Okay. 5.2 is a work session team building that we do at the Capitol Conference. Do we
We
want to
don't
talk about
actually
that?
do a work session at Capitol Conference.
Yeah, I know, so
It's not,
I'm not sure if we were doing
it's not an official board
I
meeting.
don't want to see
in
any
shape or
Capitol
form.
Conference, actually.
But we'll see each other at
Okay,
Capitol
so
Conference and maybe
we'll
have
scratch
lunch together or something.
work
Are we
session.
all going to
And
be
just-
there?
Yeah, I'm actually not, this year, and I messaged a little bit with Aida about this, because I think this was coming up when I was in Michigan, and it's kind of shifted a week from what I'm used to. I'm used to this really covering more the week before, which for a
Yep.
variety of reasons at work works better. Like there's a third Tuesday, really big important meeting that I'm part of, and this usually doesn't fall on it, but now it does. It also usually includes my November 11th holiday, so like missing a lot of work. So the way it shifted this year, I'm actually not sure yet, and I may not even know till the last minute if I can come for just like part of the day or something, so I'm sorry about that, but I anticipated it being the week prior and it's not, so I'm trying to figure that out.
Is the 13th Veterans Day?
No, the 11th is Veterans Day.
I think because the
13th
election is late this year, it's the 8th.
Yeah, it's
usually,
definitely off a week from every other year.
it is.
I've gone to
My birthday
OSBA.
is the 10th, and I consider it my gift that OSBA takes everybody away for a few days. And it gets them done.
Not this
And
year.
they're not, so I don't know what happened.
You and I can misery together, because I'm just not sure. So maybe I'll meet you all for part of the day or something, but it's also entirely possible I won't get to any of it, and I apologize about that.
Is everybody else able to make it?
Well, at the
Only
last
the Tuesday.
meeting, I thought 2 people were
Delegates, right?
delegated to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
Aida
so
and Sean,
I
right?
didn't know that the rest of us were gonna go.
Well, we try to go
But-
as a group and like cover sessions and then share what we learned, but
Okay.
that hasn't always worked out.
Yeah, not
It's like,
everybody's
it's a
making
As
goal.
long as I know
It's a goal.
that, I can
You were
plan on
totally
it, but I
welcome to
was
come.
not.
Yeah.
And
Because you get this session thing, and even
Yeah.
with 2 people, even with the official delegate and the alternate, there's still a million other things that everybody can't get to, so we
Right.
usually kind of divide and conquer, like okay, this session sounds like maybe stuff we need to know, so you go to that, and I'll go to this, and then we kind
Well,
of,
I've been to it in the past,
Yeah.
I didn't realize what the system was currently.
So typically we go, the main days are the 1st and 2nd, the 13th and the 14th, I believe, it's a Monday, Tuesday.
That's a
Tuesday.
Sunday, Monday.
So then it's the
Oh,
14th,
then it's,
15th.
yeah, Monday, it's the Monday, Tuesday.
14th,
Okay.
15th,
Yeah.
and typically that's, if you're gonna go, those are the 2 days I would go. Working my way around that. That's when I'll be there, I'm just gonna be there the 14th and 15th myself. And I think most of us will, those who are going will probably be there on those 2 days. Every now and then somebody will stay an extra day, but
I've stayed longer before I go to the student achievement, more of the student achievement stuff, because I really like that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't start up till kind of halfway through Tuesday, I don't think.
Anything else about?
I'll see what I can do.
and if you're gonna go, let Dawn know,
Right.
because she kind of takes care of
I
all the
already
arrangements for
registered
everybody.
everybody.
The whole group's registered, right?
We're all registered? No.
Because it's cheaper to do it
It
for.
is.
I did not get
Cheaper.
this. I didn't get that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. 5.3, board self-evaluation. I'm gonna suggest we kind of could table this, because Aida, would want Aida to be a part of the conversation.
Yes.
And then moving right along, Green County Career Center report, Steve.
Big numbers, the enrollment's up again at the Career Center, and so things are really humming over there. The other, I guess, big agenda item is that we saber-rattled a little bit, but we will not be going into litigation over the roof that's falling apart on our building, and the company, once we threatened maybe that we should perhaps put this before a judge, immediately trotted right on out there and said, no, well, everything will be taken care of. It's a huge job, because everything, all the seams have to be replaced, but, you know, it's one of these buildings where buckets of water would pour through, and so that's happening right now. It couldn't have been done, you know, before the school year started, but at least it will get done.
Great. Other board member items.
Well, fasten your seatbelts. No, so the board will remember that you appointed me to be the liaison with Village Council.
Ah, yes.
And so I had an opportunity to meet with councilperson Marion McQueen, who is council's liaison to the board. And I wanted to just toss out a couple of things that the council has on the horizon that are of at least peripheral interest to us. You'll remember that we talked about, or we were approached to discuss a village-wide broadband system. That seemed imminent. Now it has sort of taken a few steps back. Council is about to release an RFQ, but it's continuing to move forward on that possibility. That might well have some implications for us. They may well ask us to use facilities, you know, to locate some of the stuff if they go ahead. It may change some of our own Wi-Fi broadband stuff should it move forward. But they're now at the RFQ stage. That's supposed to go out maybe next month, is what Marianne suggested.
This is not the fiber optic.
Yeah, I think it is,
Fiber
yeah,
optic,
yeah.
okay.
They're going to break ground on a solar farm, on the glass farm by the end of the year. And I think Marianne and council, you know, see certain opportunities perhaps for students and classes to come over and check out what's going on. Likewise, next calendar year, finally, after I think we've been working on this since the late Carter administration, the Safe Routes to School program will finally, you know, get underway. So, at least that's what council is now promising. The village established a social justice task force to look at criminal justice issues in the village and to meet with lots of people, including the police and how the mayor's court is run. And I bring that up because there are two of our juniors serving on that task force, Nia and Ayana, so they will participate in this, and part of that, which I think is awesome, that the two of them are doing that. And finally, as you have all read in the news, the village has now officially taken title to that land just to the west of Antioch, Midwest, the Center for Business and whatever it was, CBE. The village, of course, you know, does not have anything in the works on that property at the moment, or even coming down the pike, but at some point, they will want to look at what to do with this property, and that will surely have some impact on us. And I think Marianne would appreciate, some cooperative dialogue about all of that, if and when and if it becomes a public issue.
See, I have a question about
Sure.
that. Do you happen to know, and I don't know the answer to this, I need to find out, but maybe you know from conversations about this, and maybe somebody else knows. Do you happen to know the land that the Antioch University Midwest is sitting on, the building is sitting on, is owned by the village or is it owned by the university?
That is an excellent question, to which I do not have an excellent answer. Somebody else raised that with me the other day, and I realized, and I simply forgot to track that down. I don't know whether,
Find out.
I don't know whether Midwest owns that, or whether the CBE, which was this, community organization,
The whole thing.
had that whole plot. So now the village has the whole plot, no idea. But that's a good question to ask. So I think that's, and the electric rates are going up, and I don't know if that's gonna, I've asked you about what do we pay every year on our utilities.
That's a question for Don.
The sound of the buck passing.
Putting in a solar farm.
It's in the plan that we'll put some solar panels and things like that up at some point, so.
We could make it telling you, because we don't use it during peak production, June, July, August. So when you sell it all back to the grid, anyway, that's for another work session. That's for council.
We're up to 12 work sessions that we need to schedule.
Before the end of the year. Okay, thank you for your report. This is we're going to go into executive session. Part of the process we do to look at the treasurer's evaluation. So I need a motion to go in.
So moved. Second.
Or actually, no, it's not going yet. Let's say thank you to everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
For being here. We'll stand and take a break.
Well, and before you guys go anywhere, I think Megan would like to take some of your pictures at least. And I think some folks around here too, because we don't have all of your pictures as well. And they're gonna put your pretty pictures, your wonderful
Did you get my
faces
tags?
on the
My words?
interweb.
Okay.
I don't think you guys, but
And it'll be
definitely
like,
Donna.
oh my God.
How come not you? You know, I
She
did
Because they already have
actually.
their
I
thing.
did, I happened to be on the phone with Mario that later. I was like, so yeah, you want me?
Get out of town.
I did end up writing your bio.
Hey, Dawn.
State tax.
Please go ahead and
So for the Alumni Association,
You just need to